Bishop John Hines inaugurated this congregation on the Feast of Epiphany in 1957. 1957. And a few years later, he left Texas to become the presiding bishop. The same year I was confirmed in Episcopalian. I don't know if he's rolling in his grave about how the church has changed, but somehow I suspect not. This congregation has lived through a lot of growth and change, and you're experiencing a new phase of life at the youthful age of 60. Youthful. It's a good time to think about the name you bear. You know, Epiphany literally means a showing or a manifestation. In common speech, it usually means to have a sudden realization about the essential nature of things. I've had an epiphany about the nature of his character, or about this problem. Robert Fulghum tells a story, a remarkable story, about a man who grew up on the island of Crete during the German occupation in World War II. One day this boy saw a German soldier crash his motorcycle in front of his house. And he went out and found pieces of the broken side mirror in the road. And he tells of polishing the largest one and playing with it, discovering that he could use this mirror to shine light into dark places. And as an adult, Alexander Papadeiros began to understand that that was a metaphor for his life and his work. He spent his career teaching reconciliation and working for peace, particularly between Germans and Cretans. He says, I came to understand that I am not the light or the source of the light, but light, truth, understanding, knowledge is there. And it will only shine in many dark places if I reflect it. I'm a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of this world, into the black places in human hearts, and change some things in some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I am about. This is the meaning of my life. One source defines epiphany as an intuitive grasp of reality through something simple and striking, like Papadeiros' mirror. We might say it's about having something simple startle us into seeing the deeper truth of things. So what about the Feast of Epiphany that we're celebrating today? There are plenty of simple things. A star in the sky, a mother giving birth in a stable, shepherds, animals, and then those wise ones who discover the light in the night sky and come looking to learn more. Those visitors are called magi. It comes from an old Persian word that means a learned priest. These religious leaders have come to honor what is holy in another land. Something so momentous that it transcends national and religious and cultural borders. Today it might be something like the Dalai Lama going to Rome for dialogue with the Pope, or the British Bishop of Hong Kong, who in 1926 went to mainland China and bowed 3 times at the tomb of Confucius. A radical demonstration in that era. Each of those visitors has recognized something holy in an unexpected place and in a surprisingly different religious tradition. This feast comes in a humble and homely event. The birth of a poor child in a barn, but one who is already recognized as a king. If we truly believe that God is one, and that God is the source of everything that is, it shouldn't be so surprising. But for most of us, most of the time, it is a hefty challenge to find the image of God in foreign territory. We have had plenty of invitations and opportunities to do that in recent months, particularly through our political campaign. And most of them have been robustly ignored or repudiated. A few of them met with open arms or with people bearing gifts. The Feast of Epiphany is about recognizing the presence of God with us as Emmanuel. And it's also about recognizing the divine image reflected in all human flesh. Baptism makes us not just witnesses, but participants in this epiphany. We're going to remind ourselves of those promises in a few minutes. But we promise to pay homage to the image of God in our midst, to offer our gifts in reconciling broken or absent relationships, in meeting all human beings with dignity and respect, and in working for justice and peace everywhere. When we say that we'll repent and return to the Lord when we miss the mark, we're saying that while we never follow the star along an easy road, we will keep turning back to the right way, to the way that Jesus teaches. So what does living Epiphany look like? Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Tucson has started hosting a bake fair on weekends where Syrian refugees sell sweets they have made and build relationships with other members of the wider community. The work that you are doing with Echoes greets the image of God in friend and stranger, in anyone who needs the milk of human kindness. And they are indeed being fed from the abundance of the larger body. In the place where my husband and I live in Nevada, the 4 Episcopal churches in the area have begun to work together for the first time ever. They're working together to help resettle refugees. One of the deacons told me about the party they hosted just before Christmas that had Syrian and African and Asian immigrants and longer-term Americans making a joyful noise and feasting together. Interfaith Ministries of Greater Houston, which partners with Episcopal Migration Ministries, resettled over 2,000 people here in Houston last year. People who have come from Cuba, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is misnamed, from Syria, Burma, Somalia, and elsewhere. A broad variety of religious traditions are represented in that group. And if you ever get to meet or work with refugees, you will quickly discover godly people. Most of them would never have survived without a deeply humble faith in God. There are myriad opportunities to see light in the stranger who becomes a friend, and to discover a deeper well of light within yourself. The Echoes volunteers who gathered here in the cold yesterday to pack and distribute produce came for that kind of epiphany. Even the business community has its epiphanies. Did you see the Amazon ad that came out in November that showed an Episcopal priest and a Muslim imam getting together for tea and a visit? And you see as they part, each one goes and orders a gift for the other one. They both have the same idea. Knee pads. Knee pads to make kneeling in prayer a bit easier for old men. There are two primary responses to meeting the unexpected: fear and curiosity. And the experience we have has a lot to do with the attitudes we cultivate. Epiphanies happen far more often to those who are ready. Herod is afraid, and he responds to a novel situation with mischief and violence. The Persian priests bring wonder and awe to that stable in Bethlehem. What are we going to bring to the next surprising encounter? I remember one that I had in the Las Vegas airport many years ago. I was trying to navigate one of those mazes of empty crowd control lanes to get to the ticket counter. And coming toward me in the opposite direction was a tiny Buddhist monk in his saffron robes. As we approached one another, I held up the rope so he could duck under. We grinned at each other and bowed, and continued on our separate journeys. Where have you met the holy in human flesh? Where have you seen light blazing in the darkness? Whenever we recognize the presence of God, it is a new epiphany. We can move about the world in wonder about what God is up to, or we can lurk and cower in fear. But what do the angels say when they show up? Fear not. Don't be afraid, for God is with you. Maybe you've heard about the experience of the Episcopal Church in Fort Worth. A lot of Episcopalians were pushed out of their church buildings there in the last 10 years. And many of them have held services in mortuaries or schools and in theaters. And they often call it church in a box. They bring hymnals and altar vessels to unpack before every service. The people who have endured have said that they've discovered that church isn't where you go, it's who you are. They mean that the church isn't the building, it's the community. I put it to you that the church is found wherever God's people are going out to discover God already at work. The church emerges when God's people have an epiphany, like the Magi looking for Jesus. Go and see what you find. At the end of this service, get up and go. Don't be afraid. Look for God in the midst of darkness. Keep doing that, and Epiphany, this congregation of Epiphany, will be healthy and vibrant and doing holy work for ages to come. Ages to come.